right, that's a pretty epic little rock cover of Star Trek Deep Space Nine's theme by Captain Meatshield, which you can find him on YouTube, Captain Meatshield, on his channel there. Kind of, I guess, also a tribute to Metallica. They were just here a second ago.
Yeah, yesterday actually.
Yesterday, yes, a student of
I
mine.
know. I actually probably would have forked out for that, but apparently the tickets sold out like 2 years ago, so that was not happening.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah, a student of mine, he was able to get tickets to that, so he was a happy camper. So
Yeah,
yeah, check out Captain Meat Shield, Captain Underline Meat Shield on YouTube for his metal cover of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which I dug. And guys, we have made it to the proverbial end of season one. And tonight, Pete and I are going to talk about the last four episodes. And I just noticed, Pete, that I had been, what do you call it, marking the episode, counting the episodes wrong because Emissary counts as just one episode. So
yeah.
if you notice that we have not done episode 16, we actually did do episode 16 last week. And tonight, we're just doing four episodes, 17 through 20, plus a season review. And the episodes that we will be reviewing tonight are The Forsaken, Dramatis Personae, however the hell you pronounce that,
Hmm.
Duet, and In the Hands of the Prophets. And what a nice little chunk of episodes here. And we're going to get right to it because it's going to be a bit of a longer show tonight. And we're going to begin with The Forsaken, which was a story by Jim Trombetta, teleplay by Don Carlos Dunaway and Michael Pillar. And oh, and Pete, before we go on, I always forget to tell folks, please like and subscribe to the page. And thanks for watching my Strange New Worlds review. And thanks for watching my Star Trek Picard finale rants, about how much I didn't like that this season. And did you finish it, by the way? Star Trek Picard?
No.
All right, I'm waiting here. I'm anxious to hear your opinion, so we'll save that for when you're finished watching it. And yeah, so if you watch that and you're here now, thanks. And I'll be trying to do my Star Trek Strange New Worlds reviews weekly, so I'll be back on all Star Trek all the time, apparently. So yes, back to the Forsaken though. Um, it's a character development episode, okay? And the plot line is not that impressive, but it's pretty much a computerized entity invades the computer system and causes problems throughout the station, including a major problem, which is the fact that Odo and Lexuana Troy, who is visiting Deep Space Nine, get stuck in a turbo lift. And it's a very unlikely combination there, character combination, but it does add a lot to her character and his character. And as always, I'm reading here from Jammer Reviews, so check him out for plot synopsis and episode reviews. So, Pete, you start us off. What are your thoughts on The Forsaken?
Yeah. Well, I think the season definitely gets a lot stronger towards the end, and this is really a good example of that. I mean, kind of a disposable episode in some way, but it had really well written, had a lot of good moments. And a lot of different characters get to shine in this one. So, yeah, the premise is like some Federation ambassadors are visiting the station, and Bashir is actually charged with babysitting them because I guess Cisco's attitude is no one's sick, then Bashir is pretty much useless, so he gives them all the shit jobs. So that's basically it. And they're all like total prima donnas. This one bitch is complaining the quarters too small, the bed's too hard. They all want to hang out on the command deck, but Cisco wants them to fuck away from there. He just wants them out of the way. The one is the Betazoid chick. Her name's Troy, so I'm guessing she's related to Deanna.
Oh my God, Pete! Yes, her mother.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Also, Gene Roddenberry's late wife at this point,
right, right,
Major
and
Barrett.
yeah, didn't she like have a thing for what's his name? Uh,
For
fuck
Picard.
yeah. Oh, did she, was it Picard? I thought she had a thing for the first officer
Oh
on
no,
the
she was all
Enterprise.
over Picard. She was all over
Okay,
Picard. I'll talk a
okay,
little bit about Lexuana when I get into it. By the way,
yeah,
the internet, guys, I apologize. It's a little crappy, I think, on my end, and it's affecting you, Pete. You're not cutting out completely, but it's a little like you're
right,
underwater. So sorry,
okay,
folks. It's Brazil. It happens.
yeah. But anyways, yeah, I was pretty sure like I'd seen this character before. It's just been ages since I've seen Next Generation. But basically, she's like an unrestrained flirt. She's a betazoid. She picks up on emotions, and she sees something she likes. She goes after it, and in this case, it is Odo. Odo stops a thief who stole her brooch. She's very impressed by his manliness and his law and order persona, and she totally throws herself at him. And Odo is really uncomfortable in this because he has a lot of speeches throughout the first season where he talks about how he doesn't understand humanoids' needs to couple and deal with other people's shit. Um, yeah, you kind of wonder, like, okay, is this how he really feels, or is this like a shield that he puts up because he feels alone and doesn't want to make himself vulnerable? But at any rate, he's so uncomfortable. He like actually goes to Cisco and like asks him to talk to her and get her to back off. Cisco's amused and tells him, you know, you're gonna have to deal with this shit. This is the way it is. I got more important things to do. In the meantime, though, they discover this probe that comes through the wormhole, and when they scan it, it kind of like it infects the computer system. And this is actually something that's been building for a little while. O'Brien having problems with the computer because it's a Cardassian computer, and he's like, "Yeah, the computer's bitchy with me, you know, when I try and get it to do stuff." And when it becomes infected, he finds that the computer's personality changes, like it becomes nicer. Except anytime he's away, shit goes haywire on the station and it causes big problems. Like there's a fire that breaks out that endangers some of the ambassadors. And the elevator breaks down with Odo and Troy in it, which is, of course, the last place Odo wants to be. Troy kind of backs off a bit, but she's like, you know, this is a chance for us to just, you know, get to know each other. First, Odo doesn't want to talk, but they're going to be there for like 15 hours. I forget how long they're there, but it's a long time. And this is also a problem for Odo because he's got to revert to his liquid state every like 15 to 18 hours or something. And that time is going
Hmm.
to pass. Um, so basically, the real crux of the episode is these two in the elevator, and Odo really just kind of learning to let his guard down because it turns out he is gonna have to let himself go liquid in front of her. And yeah, he opens up and confides in her, and she's a betazoid, so she's an empath, and she's empathetic as you would expect her to be. And we get a weird little thing going on with O'Brien trying to solve the computer problem, which is that he likens the virus to like a puppy. He says it's like a life form. And if you don't pay attention to a puppy, it causes mischief, right? So his solution is to like build a virtual doghouse in a computer so it has a home. And the episode actually ends with O'Brien asking Cisco if he can keep the puppy. And Cisco's like, "Yeah, as long as you walk it and feed it." So pretty well written episode that maybe isn't the most significant, but it's very enjoyable to watch and good for highlighting Odo, but also O'Brien and Bashir had some good moments in this one as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah, the whole computer malfunction stuff is like whatever, but what makes this episode tick is them stuck in an elevator, and I think that really is Deep Space Nine's biggest strength, and we'll get into that when we review the episode Duet, which I doubt will be low on our list. Um, Whereas they just put two people in a room and let them talk.
Yeah.
Deep Space Nine just is masterful at this more than I mean TNG could do it too pretty well, and to an extent TOS too, but Deep Space Nine just takes it to another level. Whereas we can forgive the spatial anomaly, computer malfunction plot, which is like we've seen this a million times. If you've watched any other Star Trek series at least once in your life, but they make wonderful lemonade out of these lemons. And this is one of these episodes. Now, as far as Lexuana Troy, she has been she has been, or had been, I should say, on Star Trek TNG for a while. And I tell you, she's a character a lot of people don't like because of how she is. And she presents a little bit of this in the beginning of the episode. She's loud, she's brash, she's always trying to get into something, usually a man's pants. In TNG, it was Picard, which Odo kind of fits that role because Picard's very stoic. She seems to be attracted to these very stoic, hard to get men. And Picard
Right.
was one of them who just kind of he dealt with her the best he could. He couldn't tell her to shove off because one, she's an ambassador, and two, she's Troy's mom. And Troy would be very embarrassed by her. But I always liked her. I thought Major Barrett did a wonderful job interpreting her and being a total pain in the ass. Um, but in a sweet way, because in the end, she would come around, and it was almost like um, non-god version of Q in a way. A Lexuana Troy episode would be a lot of crazy stuff going on, but in the end, they would come to like this conclusion where you're like, okay, she's not a bad person after all. And by the way, Loxana, she's the daughter of the fifth house of Beta Zed, the holder of the sacred chalice of Rix, and heir to the holy rings of Beta Zed, which she always repeats. You got to put that out there. And also another tidbit about Major Barrett, Pete. Of course, she was Gene Roddenberry's wife, but also she played the voice of the computers. So the computers on Star Trek are all Major Barrett, and she played Nurse Chapel in TOS, if I'm not mistaken. That was her. So she's been part of Star Trek history, like the godmother of Star Trek for a very, very long time. And Lwaxana Troy is just one of those characters. And yeah, I love this episode for the same reasons Pete just said. It gives us this different side of what do you call it? Of Odo, which is yes. I was just making sure that she was actually Miss Chapel. And actually, oh, I forgot. And this has to do with Strange New Worlds, which just came out. She was the original number one in the cage in the original pilot for Star Trek that was not picked up by the executives because it was just too cerebral. But she was the original number one, so we got to give her props for that. And that was Gene Roddenberry doing his best to get a woman on the bridge, and the exec said that ain't gonna fly. So that was removed when we got to the actual first episode of Star Trek, the original series. So she's been around for a while. Um, but what I said all of this to say that, this is an episode that a lot of Trekkies that don't like her really appreciate because it shows a softer side of her too, which is nice
Hmm.
to see, that she isn't just this frenetic, horny woman that just wants to fuck, 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 fuck. And she can tend to get very one dimensional that way, the character. So she shows this great empathy, which is part of what being a Betazoid is, and Odo gets to show his fragility, which we've been kind of guessing at. I mean, Pete and I, we've been watching this, and even when Odo got so pissed off when that other security officer came in from Starfleet, and I need to know who's in command, and this and that. He's very fickle, man. you know.
Hmm.
So he's got this hard exterior, but he's a softie, you know, and he's very insecure about how other people see him because of the fact that he's a shapeshifter, a changeling. So this episode lets it all hang out, and it's an episode that we needed for Odo character development. And I remember when I first watched Star Trek Deep Space Nine all the way through, this is one of the episodes that caught my attention from season one, which I don't think is the best of the seasons. You know, it's not horrible, but there aren't that many of these moments. But it's one of those episodes that makes you say, maybe I should continue watching this show. You know, there's little tidbits here of things that are really interesting with these characters, and this is definitely one that caught my attention and made me go, "Oh, that's interesting. That's different." You know, because Odo is not the most likable character on this series. He definitely wasn't for me for a long time until I think this episode. You know, this episode really made me change my mind about Odo, the character. So yes, definitely high marks for me. I give this one some high marks. And the whole subplot with the ambassadors is like, oh, whatever, you know. Julian does end up saving them in the end, right? Because of the
Yeah,
fire.
yeah,
Uh, but you know, that's like a whatever storyline, and it's so beautiful when she lets Odo melt into her dress. You know, it's so cute. So a
yeah.
lot of good moments in this episode. Next episode we're gonna get to now, folks, is Dramatis Personae, and it is episode written by Joe Minosky, directed by Cliff Ball. And a Klingon ship returns from the Quadrant, virtually destroyed by an internal mutiny. When the DS9 crew beams aboard the only survivor, they also beam over a telepathic matrix, which infects the senior staff and causes them to reenact an alien power struggle. Well, folks, if you've been listening to the podcast up to now, you know how I feel about these episodes that feel like TNG anomaly. People gets weird episodes. Not a big fan of it, only because I've seen it before. I've seen it a million times. If we go all the way back to the original series, the famous episode where they get the virus and Sulu's running around with what do you call it, a little sword, and everybody's acting all crazy. So we've seen it all the way back from the '60s show. You know, TNG did a bunch of these type episodes, so I don't need to see it again in Deep Space Nine. It brings kind of nothing new. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm not really into it. The only thing is, I mean, it's kind of interesting only because everybody gets to ham it up a little bit, including
Hmm.
Cisco. When he goes ham,
Yeah,
it's scary, you know?
yeah.
When he says he will not leave the ship because it ends up that everybody, this telepathic matrix virus, whatever, is making everybody think that there's a mutiny going on. So you got to choose sides, and O'Brien is, you know, of course, on the Starfleet side. Kira is trying to get all the non-Starfleet people on her side. And it is nice to know that the Klingons have a science department, though. You never think of the Klingons as anything more than just warring people. But for me, it's a pretty dumb episode. You know, it's solidly written. You know, it's a solid script, and it does build up to a nice finale where Odo. Oh, wait up.
I'm good.
Oh, you're good. Okay. Uh, where Odo does, you know, he's not affected because he doesn't have, you know, he's not a humanoid, and he plays both sides to the point where he's able to get them in the same room together. And was it Julian? Was Julian not affected completely? Somehow they're
No,
able
he
to.
was. He was the
He
first guy.
was, but he tricks Julian into thinking that, what is it, like if he makes this antidote, he's actually gonna be harming one side. In the end, they all kind of, there's a happy ending, of course, and then they all get unhypnotized by this telepathic matrix. But nothing to see here in this episode. It's just in the way of the two last episodes, which are awesome, pretty much.
Yeah, same thing. Usually when yeah, these are just episodes that are excuses for the actors to get a little crazy, put them in different situations. But there's going to be no consequence. That's the thing with these types of episodes is there's no stakes. Like it's not like Picard getting turned into a Borg where there are like stakes that are felt like throughout the movies and other series. I mean, like we're still dealing with repercussions from that shit. These types of episodes, they have no stakes. Like you get to see the actors do something a little different, different character relationships, but ultimately, like they're never going to mention this again, and it's going to have zero impact on the series as a whole.
I agree with you. There's the famous scene there of Sulu. It's the naked time, the episode where he goes shirtless and goes running around the ship.
Right.
Yeah, which is a
Yeah.
classic episode. And then
Yeah. I mean, the first time they worked, but and this is like a first time for Deep Space Nine. But like you said, we've been here so many times before. I did like how crazy Cisco got though. Like while
oh,
everyone
that
else,
was the best part.
yeah, while everyone else is being all devious and shit, he's just like sitting in his office building a clock like a madman, man. Like, don't talk to me. I'm building a clock.
Dude, I wouldn't. Yeah, like Cisco is just a scary dude in general. Like, which is
Yeah,
probably why people love him so much. Because even Cisco without a brain virus is scary, and with the brain virus, you don't want to fuck with the dude that's just sitting there quietly making a clock. Like that's not a dude that you want to cross. But even season one of Deep Space Nine, wasn't there? There was that episode Babel where everybody couldn't understand each other,
yeah, that one
and
was interesting though. It was a
it
little
was
different.
interesting. But it's kind of plays on this thing where people aren't being themselves, and I just watched an episode like last night from season three that was embarrassingly bad. That had to do with actually it's another Lexuana Troy episode where she comes on DS9 and she's in this moment. It's almost like a Betazoid menopause or something, and
Right.
it gives off these love pheromones, and everybody wants to fuck each other.
Yeah, nice.
But it's like embarrassing. But it's like, come on, Deep Space Nine. Like we've done that. TNG was much better at it. TOS. I don't think it fits the tone of the show in general. Uh,
Yeah. One thing about this virus they have though, or it's not a virus actually, it's a telepathic implant.
yeah, it's a
Is
telepathic matrix. They call it.
Yeah, like they're not just turned against each other, but they're actually reliving a conflict that destroyed an alien civilization. So
Yep.
they're actually all playing like certain roles.
Hmm. Yeah. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. But anyway, I was happy when it was over and I could get to an episode I was looking forward to seeing again because this is for me the first episode of Deep Space Nine that I said, "Oh shit, this is what this
Yeah,
show is." And I even tell people in the Star Trek groups, and they're like, "Oh, season one is hard to get through." I'm like, "Just try your hardest, and then you're gonna get to an episode called Duet, and your mind is gonna be blown, and then you're gonna be like, okay, this is what Deep Space Nine is, and will end up being." Now, this episode, by the way, I forgot to give the premiere dates for the other ones, but this one is July 14th, 1993. Uh, and it's a story by Lisa Rick and or Rich, I don't know, and Gene Garrigan Falchi. Teleplay by Peter Allen Fields, directed by James L. Conway, and it's an issue-oriented episode. It centers around a Cardassian named Maritza, played by Harris Yulin, who happens upon the station as a passenger on a passing ship. Kira arrests him for being a war criminal and throws him in a cell. And you see, he has a medical condition that could have only he could have only acquired at a Bajoran labor camp called Galatep. And this labor camp was also the site of horrific Bajoran treatment at the hands of Cardassian atrocities. And you think that's all it is until it just the layers start peeling off on this episode. So tell me about it, Peter. Duets.
Yeah, yeah. This is like one of those. Yeah, I think probably one of the first episodes where you go like, "Wow!" At the end, I wasn't expecting that. But yeah, so this is more of the past of the occupation of Bajor, and yeah, Deep Space Nine gets a guest who is suffering from a disease that apparently only people who were present at this Cardassian prison camp for Bajorans when it had this big mining disaster. Apparently, only people from there got it. So Kira automatically jumps to the conclusion that, okay, he's got this disease, so he's at the camp. He's a Cardassian, so he's a war criminal. So she has him locked up, but they can't actually find any proof. He's not in any databases, and he actually says that he was a file clerk. That's all he was. He was a file clerk.
Mm.
But Kira's not convinced, so she does some digging around, and she actually finds some video footage from the camp, and he is identified as not who he says he is actually, but he is in fact the head of the camp, who is like notoriously brutal. Apparently, killed thousands of people, starved thousands more. Basically, he's like the Joseph Mengele of Cardassia. So she confronts him with this information, and he brags about it. He's like, "Yeah, yeah, well, Bajorans are nothing. We're showing our strength. Blah blah blah. You were weak to be occupied." But then we get a little twist here, a great little twist. Bashir finds out that he's taking medication that only people who've altered their appearance need, and he's had plastic surgery. So Kira realizes that he has actually deliberately altered himself to make him look like this guy. And furthermore, it turns out that the leader of the camp wasn't actually present during the mining disaster. He actually died before that. So, this guy is not who he says he is. And we get a nice little twist here, spoiler alert at the end, but it turns out he really was the file clerk, and he is just haunted by remorse over the things that he saw at this camp. He felt weak because he couldn't stand up to his boss, the sounds of people screaming and dying in the night. So his plan is he wants Cardassia to take responsibility for their war crimes because they haven't so far. They've left Bajor, but like as far as the narrative being presented to the Cardassian people is that we're still the good guys, blah blah blah. And this is his way of making Cardassia take responsibilities. Like, if I go on trial for these war crimes as this guy, and I impersonate him, basically say the things he would have said, people are gonna have to wake up to the truth. And yeah, it's a really powerful scene, man. The dude kind of breaks down. You can kind of feel like what he's going through. And it does, of course, have like a really tragic ending as well. That I thought put a nice touch on it as well. I mean, you kind of knew that was coming, but it's still it fits. It's right for the episode. So yeah, great episode. One of the first season's best. Certainly an episode where it goes places that you didn't expect. Um, and some pretty good performances in this one too, especially by the Cardassian dude. Under all that makeup, he was pretty good at playing a guy who is so ambiguous. You know, like he at first, like, okay, maybe he is a file clerk, and then when he embraces his evil identity, he gets right into it. You can buy that too. But then when he breaks down at the end, it's like, okay, that's genuine.
Yes, this is Harris Yulin, who you guys
Yes.
may know from other series. I think he was in wasn't he was in Scarface. I think he was in Training Day. He's been in a bunch of good movies, good character actor.
Mm-hmm.
Ghostbusters 2, Clearing Present Danger, Looking for Richard, Training Day, Frasier. So very talented actors. So yeah, you put two talented actors because Nana Visitor, man, once she starts getting into this role of Kira and she goes beyond just like the bitchy, you know, Cardassian who's just opposing everything Starfleet's doing, but begrudgingly just goes along with it. And she
Right.
starts having layers, which is a little bit, we get the beginning of that with that episode Battlefields with her and Kai Opaka, who just lets her know you're going through some PTSD, girl. Like you're more than a terrorist, you know. And then you start seeing all these different shades of Kira, and you know, I go back to what I said from the start. I didn't like any of these characters for a while when I first watched it. Like I just couldn't connect with any of them. And then slowly these layers start coming off of these characters. And I think and then they start really being able to, well, when the script is better, you act better, I guess. You know, because they're all talented actors. Um, and she just kills it, man. She kills it in this performance. He kills it in this performance, and you feel it. You feel also one thing that I thought was really beautiful about this is how it showed that she is willing, you know, as much as she hated what the Cardassians did, she's willing to say no, you're a good man, you know. She, so that gets into the whole Trek philosophy of, you know, don't judge a whole race of people based on the actions of a few bad ones, in this case many bad ones, you know. I doubt there are that many good Cardassians in the occupation. So I think
Right.
that's an important point that this episode made too, is that the Cardassians weren't this one-dimensional bad guy like the
Right.
board or something, you know, that they're all bad. They're all bad. No, even Gold Dukat is a character that, as bad as he is, there's episodes where you're like, whoa, I'm on his side, or I get exactly what he's saying right here.
Yeah.
So masterwork in the script writing department. And this one is it. This is like for me the beginning of Deep Space Nine for real. You know, as far as showing us what it can be. You know, I think season two still, you know, it's up and down, but this sets up some amazing things to come. Um, and you know when he's trying to fake it, Pete, it's so good when he's saying you Bajorans are nothing and this and that, and you really
Yeah.
believe it. I had forgotten the twist at the end. I knew there was a twist
Yeah.
coming, but I forgot what it was. Uh, and what's he say? What you call genocide, I call a day's work. God damn,
Yeah.
you know. And then you do get
Yeah.
Gold Dukat on the phone too, so he's in this episode too for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful guys. If see the thing with an episode like this, Pete, you almost want to tell somebody who's struggling through season one, just watch this episode and see what you. But there's build up, man. I mean, even in those silly episodes, there's character build up. That's why it's you can't just say skip to season three. It's like you need even the other episodes in season one to build up to something like Duet for it to make sense. Because you got
Right.
to know how much Kira hates the Cardassians. You got to know how
Right.
much they trust, you know, everything that's happened, in order for the impact of an episode like this to really hit home. But really beautiful episode. And for Deep Space Nine fans, usually in their top 10, like of the whole series. Um, so let's get to the last episode. This is a 5 star for me. I give very few 5 star ratings, but this one gets a 5 star. But the final episode of the season. is in the hands of the prophets. Okay, and it premiered on July 21st, 1993. Written by Robert Hewitt Wolfe, directed by David Livingston, um, and it's it's an episode that kind of wants to show us what happens when the Federation, secular teachings, and Bajoran religion collide. And we get our first appearance, if I'm not mistaken, of Miss Louise Fletcher playing
Hmm.
Fennec Wynn, everybody's favorite bad guy from this series, publicly denouncing the classroom teachings of Keiko O'Brien. Because I told you that school would come in handy later. Um, the result is a sudden rift between the Bajoran and Federation people, undermine everything Cisco hopes to accomplish. And the episode kind of springs off from there. Um, First off, my space bitch is here. I love Vedic Wind, man, and my child, she's such a bitch, but she's
Yeah.
great. Uh, and I remember when I first went through Deep Space Nine, and I had such a visceral hate for this woman. And I said, should I be feeling this much hatred for a TV character? And I
Yeah.
felt bad about it. And then I go into the Deep Space Nine Facebook groups and Star Trek Facebook groups, and they all say, we hate this woman, like with a fucking passion. But then
Yeah.
what was nice is they all say, but that's a credit to her acting. And it is.
Yeah. Yes.
My God, like the hatred you have for this bitch, man. But basically, yes. This episode centers around um, Keiko's school, and Vedic Wind comes in, and she's asking Keiko in the middle of the classroom, "What are you teaching them about the wormhole?" And Keiko
Right.
gives a very scientific answer about, it's a spatial this and that and all this techno babble. And Vedic Wind asks, "But is it what do you call it? But are you teaching them that the prophets live in there? And how can Bajoran children be going to this school? And this and that and the third. And then before you know it, we got this secular versus religious debate, which, hurrah for Deep Space Nine for being brave enough to touch on a subject like that. Um, and Cisco's kind of in the middle because he's like, what do I have to do? What am I going to do to. I've been working here for a year to get the Bajorans and Starfleet to work together. And here comes this crazy woman who's just throwing it all down the drain. And we also get to meet Vedic Baral, which I can never pronounce his name right. Not my favorite character on the episode. He's like Mr. No charisma at all. He's very robotic, but does play an important role in a few future episodes. And he's there to he's more of a middle ground type of guy. And what's interesting about all of this, guys, is that this sets up a little bit of what will become a Bajoran power struggle because we know Kaiopaka is out there lost in the Gamma Quadrant on that planet where people don't die. So we need a new Kai. And Vedic Baral is up there on the list. He's very popular. But Vedic Win, she's not as popular, but she's one of those, um, you know, s- small voices that's very loud, and
Yeah.
she's got a chance at getting that position, and she's trying to make a stand. This is all politics, we learn very soon. And and she's very conservative, if you want to put it in
Hmm.
modern terms. She's would be more of a conservative Bajoran who thinks, we kind of have to get back to Bajoran tradition and this, that, and the third. And whereas Vedic would be more of a liberal guy, where he thinks, hey, what the prophets want doesn't have to be taken as literally as people think. I will admit, I don't even know what the hell is going on with the B plot. I think there was a B plot here with some technical issues on the ship. Um, oh, I remember now. I completely had forgotten, but now I remember it's this episode. Okay, because remember, Pete, we had talked how about how O'Brien basically was doing everything by himself, but then there was this girl that
Yeah,
was helping him. Maybe 4 or 6 episodes ago, they introduced her, and yes, so this girl here ends up to be in cahoots with Kai. Well, she's not Kai yet. Vedic Win, and in the end, there's a plot to assassinate uh, Vedic Baral. So that interplays. So there's a whole lot of plot here, and there's a
yeah,
terrorist attack on. But this all culminates because there's a terrorist attack on Deep Space Nine where they blow up the school. You know, and they all have to have a meeting about it on the promenade, and everybody's there, and there's an assassination attempt, and good lord, it's insane. It's an insane episode, but it's a great
yes,
episode, and it sets up what again, like Duet did, what this series is capable of and what it meets and exceeds as we get into later seasons, which is now it's not the terrorist angle, now it's the religion versus secular angle and the power struggle within Bajor between different religious sects. So much going on. Well acted, beautifully performed, and of course, the standout is Miss Louise Fletcher, the space bitch. I love her. What do you think of this
yeah.
one?
Yeah, it was a great end to the series. I mean, it hits the ground running right away with Wynn coming into the classroom and totally just almost getting in a cat fight with Keiko there. Like she tries to be diplomatic, but she's a no shit kind of lady, right? So she's not going to take some fucking religious bitch coming into her classroom and telling her what to teach and how to teach it. So yeah, she gets her back up pretty good. And from there, it just takes off. You realize, okay, this is going to be about separation of church and state, whether or not religion belongs in schools. But there's a lot more to it. It's because it's kind of like it's not really the main thing. It's more of a plot device that's used to lead us in to deeper stories, the things you were talking about, the power struggle among the religious order, the differing viewpoints on Bejor. But it's still a huge part of the story. We have this whole terrorism angle. One scene I really liked in this actually, and this is why actually it doesn't work so well as a parallel to say um, Western societies and the issue of whether or not religion belongs in schools. And that's the conversation that Cisco has with Jake.
That's great.
Uh,
Yes, I
it,
had
it
that
was
in
a
my
great
notes.
scene,
Yeah.
but this is why it doesn't really work as a parallel to real life issues, and that's because the prophets are real. Like with other religions, there's no proof that they exist, whereas Cisco has actually seen them, so there's no doubt that they exist. The issue is how do you frame their existence um, within a formal education curriculum.
Yeah.
And like when Cisco's trying to explain it to him, Jake's like, "Well, that's stupid." I laugh because that Cisco's going to scold him for saying that because this is Star Trek. But I'm like, "You're right, Jake. That is kind of stupid." But Cisco's got a point. He's like, they don't exist in a linear space. They see like the past, present, and future. So to see them as prophets is actually a reasonable interpretation. So the issue boils down to is like, well, whose responsibility is that? If you're, a staunch secularist like I am, it's like, no, you don't want that in the schools. You just want to teach science, and if that's, what your family beliefs or whatever are, your cultural beliefs, you need to go someplace else for that kind of instruction. Um, and yeah, O'Brien's little assistant here. I mean, there's so many bad things going on in the ship. You kind of kick yourself for not seeing it sooner. There's a guy who gets murdered
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a murder mystery going on, and then there is the school gets blown up, and yeah, ultimately it culminates in an assassination attempt. And it turns out the whole time it was O'Brien's assistant, which kind of sucks because he doesn't seem to have anyone else. He seems to be like the only engineer on
And
the
she was
ship.
so good too. She knew
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, she was pretty clever. And yeah, there's she kind of like tries to throw him off the scent by like almost flirting with him a bit in one scene that was kind of weird. But yeah, that whole element added something to it as well. And the way the season ends, actually, like it's pretty clear to everyone that Wynn was behind the attempt to assassinate Burrell, but her little helper is going to take the fall for her. So she gets away from it with it scot free. And what we realize, of course, is that this whole thing with the school was actually just a smokescreen.
Yes,
Um, it was never about the curriculum, but it was about to create enough dissension on the space station to get Barao there so she could kill him and eliminate
exactly.
her chief rival for Kai. So very clever episode. Great way to end the season. It definitely sets up a lot of potential things to come, which do come, and it totally makes you want to see more.
For sure. My last note here is it's established that Win will do anything to beat her competition, and man, will she. And what a great introduction to a character, man. Like you said, like this episode hits the ground running right from the first scene where she gets to the school and she's butting heads with Keiko, and you just know it just comes out of nowhere. You're like, oh shit, we're going here, you know? And it's written so well that you don't realize that it's all a smokescreen till the end, too. You know, you actually do think for a good chunk of the episode, well, you know, there's something going on, but that she really does care about whether the kids learn science or religion in the school and all this and the third, and Cisco also, Avery Brooks, I think, starts warming up to the character a little bit more towards the end of the season, and he's very passionate in this episode about making this work. He just does not. He's worked very hard to try to get these two people to work together, the Bajorans and Starfleet, and the school was a symbol of that. The school was a great symbol of that, and for it to be gone and to have all this dissension all of a sudden, you can see it in his face. But he does give a great speech to kind of get the morale back up and say, look, we got to work this out. We got to make this thing work because otherwise, it's back to what the life you had. You have the opportunity here to really evolve and make something of Bajor moving forward. And I'm glad you mentioned the conversation with him and Jake because I thought that was so great how he was able to respect this other belief but still have his own beliefs. And of course, yeah, like you said, there are actual things inside the wormhole, so it does make it a little bit easier to make that jump. But in Star Trek, there's actually a pretty cool video about religion in Star Trek. Star Trek has flirted with religion a little bit, never for out of the human characters. I think it's kind of understood that humanity's moved on from any religious belief. But I always like the stance of the human characters where they respect it. Like the Klingons have a definite religion and they have their, whatever, their gods. No, they said that they killed all their gods because they annoyed them. But,
Yeah,
there's different cultures that have a what we would call a traditional religion. In the Starfleet officers are willing to respect them, and I think that's important for the show, where they say that look, you can be a scientist and you can believe that's all bullshit, but you can still respect that a religious life doesn't necessarily, or religious belief doesn't necessarily make somebody an idiot or stupid. In that they can, there's even some wisdom that can come from that. In fact, Spock was very religious. He's, Kirk's best friend. And there's scenes in the movies where Spock is there meditating, and it seems very religious. I don't know what they're praying to. So even a race as logical as the Vulcans have some sort of religion, philosophy, whatever, of something greater than they are. So I thought that that was played perfectly in this episode, especially because they went deeper than any other Star Trek show has gone before with dealing with those issues. And it's so easy, Pete, to just make it a almost, well, we just did an X-Files thing, like, and you see, I think every episode that was like that, I complained about how Mulder just made it so black and white. It's like, oh, I don't believe in this bullshit, and Scully did. I don't think that's not a very nuanced look. Whereas here in Deep Space Nine, they were able to give a much more nuanced view of what it means to be religious, which can be good, could be bad. Kai Wynn, or not, she's not Kai yet. Vedic Wynn definitely shows us how religion, just like politics, just like anything else, can be manipulated to be very bad. I think Baral in what's her name, the one that's Opaka, show us where it can be not manipulated and seen as a force of good. And religion is kind of, it can be neutral too, just like politics. And then you manipulate it and use it uh, for both good and bad. So beautiful episode, really good end of the season, and scary end of the season, right? Not a happy ending there. Kind of like shit.
Yeah,
We thought this was going to work out. Now, speaking of the X Files, this harkens back to, we closed the X Files right at the end of season one. I think the X
yeah.
Files are closed. So where do we go from here? All right, folks. That was actually kind of quick there. We made
There's
it
only
through.
4 episodes. So,
Yeah, we made it through the end of season one of Deep Space Nine. And now we're going to kind of give you our thoughts on the season as a whole. What do you think of this season as a whole, Pete?
yeah, it's pretty much what a first season should be. Setting up the premise, introducing the characters, allowing them to develop equally, and establishing the promise of things to come. And it is a good premise. It's for Star Trek to take off a ship, which, I mean, that's what people think Star or did at the time anyway. I think most people still do, actually. I think with shows like Picard and Deep Space Nine, people are, okay, there's more to it than that. But still, I think at the time, taking Star Trek off a spaceship with all new characters was a pretty bold move. And they managed to make the most of it. They created an environment that basically had limitless possibilities. And yeah, they just only began to touch on that here, but they definitely left you feeling like, man, this can go places.
I'm with you. I'm with you. This for me, the season one is, again, if you're a fan of Star Trek, and better than season one of the Next Generation by a million light years. Okay, um, better than Star Trek Voyager, better than Enterprise. So of the post the original series seasons, it's definitely the best one. For me, there's maybe two episodes that are just like, God, I would never watch that again. But it does what a first season does. Like Pete said, sets up the good premise, but it also does what a first season does as far as tries things and see what works, what doesn't. Yeah, not every episode is going to be stellar, but the good thing is that you can see glimmers of, okay, this show can actually blow it out of the park at some point, and thankfully it stuck around long enough to do just that. But it's not the most unwatchable season of Star Trek. You just have to keep this in mind, which I keep repeating, it's like a mantra, is you gotta stick with it because then it goes bonkers. It's just like amazing good. But for a first time watch, I understand 100%. And this, like Pete, I think for you, Pete, it's almost like a first time watch because you said
Yeah.
barely, you caught a few episodes here and there, so it's cool to hear your perspective because I'm coming from a second time watch. Even I don't remember all the plot beats, but I remember my first time watch of season one, and I was like, "Oh my god! Like, is this gonna get any more interesting? It just bored me at times." But then you get an episode like Duet, or or Captive Pursuit, or a few of these in the middle that go, "Oh, wait, there's more to this than what had come before," which was TNG. It really set itself apart. Um, so let's get into our top eight episodes. Oh no, we didn't do a skip and watch for this for these four episodes. So let's go back here. And for the Forsaken, for me, it's a definite watch. I like this
Yeah,
one.
yeah, me as well.
And Dramatis Personae, I skipped this one. Nothing to see here.
Yes, I would skip that as well.
Duet, I'm just gonna double it up. Duet in the Hands of the Prophets are like must watches. They're not even
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, incredible episodes. Um, but let's go now. Top eight. Well, I'll start. I'll tell you my number eight episode is The Emissary. Okay, it's at the bottom, guys, only because of what I said way back in the first episode that we did. For me, it lags a little bit when Cisco is in the wormhole, but it's a strong first episode. Sets up the series well. Characters are still kind of wooden, not likable. So there's issues with it, but overall, a strong episode, and it sets up the series as well as you can in an hour and 30 minutes, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. My number eight is Progress. I actually had a hard time picking eight episodes because I
Me
mean,
too.
there's only 20, and like a lot of them are kind of. Um, I guess yeah. This one mostly just the story as I mentioned in our last podcast. It's a little overly familiar, but it's executed well. I guess
Progress, which one is that? Is that the one
that's the
where.
one with Brian Keith, the guy who doesn't want to leave
Oh!
the moon.
That's crazy that you put that on there, and I didn't. I didn't put that on my top eight, and I really liked that episode. I put an episode. Okay, anyway, but I had totally forgotten about that one. But that's a good one. Um, I put as my number seven, Past Prologue, which is episode two, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
where there's a Bajoran extremist that's wanted by the Cardassians, and I like it only because it shows a little bit of this moral or this. Well, I guess it wouldn't be a moral quandary, but more of a uh, what's the word, Pete? Who you are loyalty quandary, I guess.
Conflicting loyalties.
Yes, for Kira, right off the bat, is she still with the Bajorans and the resistance movement, or has she sold out to the Starfleet way, which leads to your episode Progress, because that deals with it kind of in the same way. But I liked it just because of that. The plot wasn't anything amazing, but I did like that aspect of it.
Okay. My number seven was Captive Pursuit.
Oh yeah, I like this one with what's his name? I am
Torg,
Tars.
Tog,
Tor.
Torg. Yeah, I forget what he was. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a story we've seen before.
Tusk. Tosk.
Yeah, that's
Tusk.
right. Hunting for sport, hunting people for sport, and all that sort of stuff. But it was a good O'Brien showcase, I thought, and it kind of showed how the characters, even Cisco, were kind of willing to work outside the rule book sometimes. They didn't have to be bound by these rules versus ethics quandaries. Like we got a little more wiggle room in this situation. So it was good for
Yes,
that.
I agree with you. It's funny, all these episodes give us sprinkles of, things that later will be like major things. And definitely that was one of the first episodes where you see Cisco willing to bend the rules. I put at number 6 Battle Lines, which again, it's like a kind of repeating theme here. The plot isn't anything incredible, but the character beats are, which is Kaiopaka, goes out to the Gamma Quadrant, gets stuck on this planet. But Kira, again, evolution here. It's her letting Kira know, look, you're not just a terrorist. This is not what your life is. You gotta move on from that. So it's almost like Kira's personal emissary episode where, Cisco had to move on from the past in that episode, and now Kira has got to evolve, and we get more sides of her after that, which I really like. So I dig that episode, Battle Lines, for that
Okay.
reason.
My number six would be one we talked about today, and that would be The Forsaken. Um, good, good Odo-centric episode, but not just that. It really kind of spread the development around between characters, and yeah, it was just a good talking episode.
Talking. And then my number 5 is the Negus. I had so much fun with this. It's a funny episode. I know we disagreed about whether this brought the Ferengi up or down as far as character wise. But for me, it brought them up. Like, it just opened up the possibility of what their culture was. It got into their culture, and I think that's another episode that's important as for the series moving forward, because you see that every Ferengi doesn't necessarily believe that how they run their culture is right. So
Hmm.
you got to have a setup of what is going on in their culture, and this episode does it, and it does it in a funny way. It's a funny episode. So I like this one.
Okay. Um, so I guess that would be number five for me.
Yes.
Number five is Babel, which is the one where everyone was struck with dysphagia. Really interesting premise, just because number one, it is a real condition, but it's not a viral condition. It's more of a degenerative condition. But if it was a viral condition and a highly effective one that could also kill you, man, that would really suck because you would be in the situation they were in, which is you got to find a cure for this thing fast because eventually, like, we're going to lose all ability to communicate with each other and understand other forms of communication. So it was an interesting look at a real condition that I did not know anything about until actually the next day, the day after I watched this episode, was when I heard that Bruce Willis had it. So yeah, it was a different take on the everyone's infected with something uh, scenario that Star Trek has done so many times.
Yes, I remember you really, really love that one. And then my number 4 is Captive Pursuit, one of the earlier episodes here. I guess it's episode number 6, um, or 5 actually. And this is a great O'Brien episode, so I'm happy. That always makes me happy when I see
Hmm.
an O'Brien episode because I love O'Brien, the Everyman, and just interesting, kind of funny premise, with this alien that actually wants to be hunted, and Starfleet with their Starfleet way of you gotta respect other cultures, like if that's what it is, that's what it is. And like Pete said, an early sign of these folks out on the edge of the frontier willing to bend the rules a little bit in order to, get through another mission, another episode. So pretty cool little episode, Captive Pursuits.
Yeah. All right. Number four, If Wishes Were Horses. Um, Pretty crazy comedy episode. Not full on comedy because they are in a little bit of danger. Kind of nutty, like the way they just use this premise to say, hey, like, it's Star Trek and we can just kind of do anything we want. And they do. Although the definite star of this episode is Terry Farrell being all sexy as her imaginary horny double.
I know, poor Bashir in the end, so embarrassing. And I'm glad you mentioned that, man, because some folks get so serious about Star Trek, and it's like Star Trek, philosophy and social commentary and this. This was also the show, guys, that had the fucking tribbles, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, this is also the show that the TNG crew went down to a planet and picked up a game that they would play and get addicted to. And the whole episode was about being addicted to a video game. Yes, Star Trek is weird sometimes, and it makes no sense, and that's what's fun about it too. It's campy as hell.
Yeah.
Not my favorite episode, but it was cute. And I did like that speech at the end about the importance of imagination. So yeah,
Hmm.
sometimes Star Trek is just wacky and weird, and because it's space and there's strange things in space. My third favorite episode of this season is one we talked about tonight. Actually, my top three are all episodes we talked about tonight. Um, and it's The Forsaken. And for basically the same reasons Pete said, but more specifically, Lexuana, I can never pronounce her name, Loxana Troy, and Odo in that elevator, giving us more dimension to her character, like I mentioned in the review, a character that's much maligned in Star Trek because she can be fucking irritating. uh, but here she showed a softer side. She showed a true empathic side, if you want to put it, basically, because she is a Betazoid. And it showed that fragility that Odo has and more layers to his character, different side to his character. So, really great episode because of that.
All right. My number three season finale, which is Hands of the Prophets. For all the reasons I mentioned minutes ago, it was a great, great finale.
Well, there you go. I'm at same as you, but I'm at number two. Within the hands of the prophets, it just showed us right at last episode. It's like buckle your seatbelts, folks, because we're just gonna go heavy on some topics, and it is what it is. So we did the weird mental viruses that made you talk funny, and we did the weird move along home and all that. We did the weird stuff too, but this is what the show's bread and butter is or can be, and it will be, in a couple seasons. So lovely episode, full of intrigue, and it's so much happens in 40 minutes. That's what's crazy, Pete. Some of these
Yeah,
episodes, like how the hell did they pack that much into 40 minutes? But they did it. It's fucking insane.
I know.
What?
It had like three major crimes take place on the station, plus the religious
Yes.
conflict, plus the betrayal. That's a lot of shit.
Plus they blow up the damn school.
Yeah,
Plus Keiko going all nutty and going to Cisco, and I can't believe you're letting her do this. Oh man, it's like so much is going on. It's insane, but it's
yeah,
seamless. And of course, we get our space bitch. Yeah.
yes. All right, so my number two would be Duets.
Hmm.
Powerful, powerful episode. Really surprising, but definitely, yeah, number two.
And that's my number one is Duet.
Yeah,
Just sit two people in a room with an interesting story to tell and let them grind each other out, man. And this is it. I mean, and that twist just sneaks up on you. And when it does, like the emotional impact that it has is so powerful. And everything, I mean, I just talked about it, so I'm not going to repeat it all, but
right.
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful episode. Duet.
Yeah, yes. And my number one would be the pilot, which is actually the only episode from this season that I remember from the first time because I actually saw it at a nightclub on a big screen in stereo surround sound, which was awesome. But yeah, I like this because I did see it both times I've watched it, not as a two-parter, but as it was intended to be, which is like a movie-length episode. And it really did feel like this could be like, if you take a few tweaks to take the Star Trek out of it, you could easily adapt this to like a pretty good theatrical science fiction movie. Great introduction to Cisco as a character, great introduction to the whole concept. I like the fact that the wormhole was like it wasn't like a swerve, but it was like not introduced until the second act, really. So the first
Mhm.
act is just all about setting up why they're at this station, giving you Cisco's backstory, introducing the characters. Then the second act, you get the wormhole, which even at that point, you don't know that that's going to be like the focal point of the series. And you get all this stuff going on with Cisco and the aliens. And then in the third act, you got the crisis with the Cardassians looking for Gul Dukat. So it was, it really felt like way bigger than just a TV episode pilot. This looked like something like, yeah, fuck, I paid to see that in the theaters, man.
Yeah, no, it's pretty damn good. I was listening to another YouTuber and he said something really funny. He was like, Deep Space Nine just came out just saying we are not, your father's Star Trek, and to the point where they're like, that starship that they got? Well, we got no starships. All the happy family stuff that you love about TNG? Well, everybody hates each other on this damn
Yeah,
starbase. And that guy that everybody loves, Picard? Well, our main character hates his fucking guts. It's like
yeah,
it's like everything that you thought. It's like just inverted in but in a good way, in a way that makes sense. It's not just to subvert and just be different to be different, and no, everything makes absolute sense of for the characters. And I agree with you, it's a great setup. It's just for me, I sometimes I fall asleep while Cisco's in there having his experience in the wormhole. I think that's the only part of the episode that lags a little bit. But cool. That is it. And I think we got a viewer in there at the last minute. Thanks for hanging with us. And thanks for everybody that watches on the replays. We will be getting into season 2 next week. And that'll be fun. And that's about it. I'll see you guys tomorrow for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I hope you are there to join me around the same time, 10 p.m. And Peter, any last words?
No, just thanks to everybody who's been watching. I think we've dropped off a bit since the X Files because we don't have as much group support. So those of you that have found your way here, we definitely appreciate it. It's always nice to have an audience, and look forward to continuing the journey in season 2.
I do too. All right, folks. Adios.
Cheers.